My name is Yara Ose, and I want to tell you about the day I met a child who had never seen a sky. Not a cloudy sky, not a painted sky, not even a photograph of a sky. She had never in her entire 7 years of life looked up and seen something that went on forever. She had only ever seen metal ceilings, flickering lights, and the cold black of space through a cracked viewport that someone had patched with a piece of plastic sheeting and hope. Her name, translated as closely as our systems could manage, meant something like, the memory of warmth. I thought that was the saddest thing I had ever heard, a child named after something her people could barely remember. I am a xenobiologist. I have spent 15 years studying life in its many forms across the galaxy. I have cataloged species, documented behaviors, written papers that 12 people read, and 3 of them cited. I thought I understood alien life. I thought I had seen most of what the universe had to offer. I had not yet been to a drift station. The assignment came through official channels, buried in language so dry it could have started a fire. Extended Biological Survey, Recovery Vessel UES Threshold, Destination, Drift Station Verath 9, Duration, 3 weeks. My commanding officer handed me the file and said, almost as an afterthought, pack warm, and pack a lot. I understood what he meant when I saw the manifest. The threshold was not a science vessel in any meaningful sense. Yes, it carried laboratory equipment and recording devices and everything a proper survey mission required. But it also carried 42,000 cubic meters of other things, prefabricated shelter units, water purification systems, medical supplies organized by species type, including species we had only just begun to understand, seeds for 17 different climate zones, livestock embryos in cryo-storage, books, musical instruments, children's toys. The cooperative had approved our mission as a data-gathering exercise. They had read the application, stamped it, and filed it away without ever wondering why a biological survey needed 50,000 stuffed animals. We left dock on a Tuesday. I stood at the rear observation window and watched Earth shrink behind us, that blue and green impossibility hanging in the dark, and I thought about the list. 60 years of membership in the Galactic Cooperative, 60 years of Earth's diplomats sitting in chambers full of species older and larger, and considerably more impressed with themselves, listening, learning, asking careful questions and writing things down. The list had started as a quiet project in the basement of the Foreign Affairs building in Accra. It had grown, over 6 decades, into something enormous and meticulous and patient. The Verath were entry number 4 on that list. I should explain what a drift station is, because the cooperative's name for them is deliberately gentle, and I refuse to use gentle language for something this harsh. A drift station is a place where you put people you have decided are no longer worth the trouble. It is an orbital platform, usually cobbled together from decommissioned equipment, placed at the outer edge of mapped space where it will not bother anyone. You give the people inside enough to survive, technically speaking, and then you turn your attention to more productive things. You do not kill them. You are very careful to point that out. You simply stop including them in the story of the galaxy and wait, without acknowledging that you are waiting, for the problem to resolve itself quietly over time. The cooperative had been doing this for over 200 years. They called it managed declassification. A species that failed to meet certain benchmarks, economic productivity, territorial expansion, technological development on a specific timeline, was evaluated, voted upon, and relocated. 41 years ago, the Verath had received 31 votes in favor of declassification, 9 against, and 2 abstentions. Earth had not yet been a member. When I think about those 2 abstentions, I wonder about the species that cast them. I wonder if they think about it still. We arrived at Verath 9 on the 19th day. I was standing on the bridge when it came into view, and I remember the silence that fell over the crew. Not the comfortable silence of people concentrating, the heavy silence of people looking at something they were not prepared for. The station was enormous, and it was falling apart. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in the slow and grinding way that things decay when no one is maintaining them properly, because there are not enough people left, and the people who remain are exhausted, and have been exhausted for so long that exhaustion has become their normal. Panels were dark, sections were sealed. What had once been agricultural bays were mostly empty. The population had contracted inward, clustering in the areas where the life support was still reliable, living smaller and smaller lives in a shrinking space. 11,000 people. That was what remained of a civilization that had once filled a planet and 2 moons, and had been, by all historical accounts, extraordinarily beautiful. The Verath were chromatophoric, meaning their skin could shift through a spectrum of colors and patterns the way our faces shift through expressions. They had communicated in color language for millennia before they ever developed spoken words. Their history, their emotions, their philosophy, their poetry, all of it lived in light. 41 years in a decaying metal station had not taken that from them. They were still speaking in color. They were just running out of people to speak to. I was in the third shuttle that landed. I carried a medical kit, a translator unit, and a box of supplies that I kept bumping against my knee. The docking bay was dim. A few Verath stood at a distance, watching us with large, careful eyes. Their skin was showing colors I did not yet know, but our translator's learning algorithm was already working, cataloging, cross-referencing. Then a child walked forward. She was small. 7 years old, I would later learn. She had 6 limbs like all her kind, and her skin was cycling through a pattern I would come to recognize as anxiety mixed with curiosity, the same combination that lives in every child who sees something new and wants to know if it is safe. She walked up to me specifically, which I later found out was because my jacket was orange, and orange apparently meant something positive in Verath color language, something related to safety and warmth. She reached out with her smallest limb and touched my hand. Her skin shifted to pale gray, then a dim and questioning blue. The translator spoke quietly in my earpiece. "Are you also leaving?" I crouched down so we were at eye level. I said, very clearly, "No. We are the ones who stayed." I do not know if she fully understood, but her skin flickered, just briefly, to a color that the translator logged as unknown, warm and tentative, something new. We began unloading the same afternoon. 6 days later, they arrived. The Theresi observer ship was sleek and cold, like everything the Theresi built, and it sat at the edge of our operational range with the specific energy of an authority figure who has just noticed that someone is not following the rules. Ambassador Keelthaxis requested a formal meeting. I attended as Earth's representative because our actual diplomat was elbow-deep in a medical consultation with one of the Verath elders, and I was, technically, next in rank. Keelthaxis was tall. The Theresi are always tall. They are insectoid in structure, precise in movement, and communicate in a way that is deeply logical and almost completely lacking in what humans would call emotional range. This is not a criticism. They are simply built differently. But it does make them very good at treating people as data points. He explained the situation to me as though I were a student who had missed an important lesson. The Verath were declassified. They held no recognized status within the cooperative framework. Earth was interfering with an established process without jurisdiction or authorization. The supplies we were unloading represented an unsanctioned resource transfer to a non-viable population. He used the phrase non-viable population the way someone uses a technical term, smoothly and without discomfort. I let him finish. I took notes, actually. Then I opened a file on my tablet and turned it so he could see the document title. The Earth Compact of 2091, I said. Specifically, subsection 14, paragraph 7, which your government signed along with 36 other cooperative members. It states that any species retaining biological sapience and cultural memory retains the right to petition for planetary resettlement under the custody of a recognized sponsoring nation. I paused. Earth is a recognized sponsoring nation. The Verath retain both biological sapience and cultural memory. We checked, thoroughly. Keelthaxis looked at the document. That clause was written as a procedural formality. It was never intended to be activated. I understand that is what was assumed, I said, as politely as I have ever said anything in my life. Our diplomats spent 19 years embedding it into cooperative law anyway. They are very patient people. He told me to halt operations. I told him, respectfully, that we would not be doing that. He told me Earth was risking significant diplomatic consequences. I told him we were aware of the risks and had decided they were worth accepting. He left. His ship did not leave, but he did not attempt to physically stop us. Because the one thing the cooperative genuinely believed in, the one value that held even when everything else bent under the weight of their logic, was that their laws meant something. They had signed the compact. They knew they had signed it, and they knew we knew. What Keelthaxis did not know yet was what I learned that evening when the tight beam message came from Earth. 12 more ships were en route. Not warships, not military vessels of any kind. Arks, each one carrying supplies and personnel, and the same legal documentation we carried. Each one pointed at a different drift station. Earth had not organized a rescue mission. Earth had organized a rescue program, 41 stations, one at a time, all launching within the same 72-hour window so the cooperative could not respond to one before the others were already in position. Our Prime Secretary addressed the Cooperative General Assembly live. I watched it on a small screen in the Threshold's common room with 6 of my crewmates and 2 Verath who had come aboard to help with supply sorting. The secretary spoke without anger and without apology. You built these stations because you could not bring yourselves to end lives directly. That restraint is the only decent part of this policy, and we acknowledge it. but there is a very large distance between not killing someone and welcoming them. We intend to spend the next several years crossing that distance. We invite anyone who wishes to join us. The cooperative issued a formal censure within 48 hours. Earth's Foreign Affairs building in Accra added it to the wall. It was the 47th. There was a small celebration. Meanwhile, I was learning to speak in color. The elder the crew had come to call Shimmer at Dusk had decided, for reasons I did not fully understand at first, to extend something like trust in my direction. Not because of anything I said. I think it was because of what I did not say. I did not make promises. I did not explain plans or timelines or diplomatic maneuvering. I simply showed up every day and worked beside him and his people. I helped reinforce structural panels. I learned which food preparations the Verath children preferred. I sat with the elders in the evenings while they maintained their oral history through skin pattern storytelling, and I watched without asking for translation, just watching the light move across their skin, like a language older than anything I had studied. After 12 days, Shimmer at Dusk sat beside me and changed color slowly and deliberately. The translator worked hard. It came back with this: "Why does your kind do this? What is the shape of what you want in return?" I thought about it honestly. I did not reach for an easy answer. "We tried living in a galaxy where worth is measured in productivity," I said. "We looked at what that produced. We did not like it. So we are trying to measure worth differently. We are trying it for you because we want to try it for everyone. Because we want to live in a different kind of galaxy than the one we found." He was quiet for a long time. Then his skin moved through a cascade of colors that our translator had not catalogued yet. It processed for several seconds, longer than usual, and then offered a careful approximation. "This is the color of something we had no name for. We may need to borrow a word from you." I told him we had plenty to spare. The day we left, 9,847 Verath came with us. A small group of elders stayed behind voluntarily to maintain the station as a record, a memorial, a place where their story could be preserved in the form that it had happened. I respected that completely. Some histories need to stay where they occurred, so they are never comfortable enough to be forgotten. The journey home took 22 days. I spent most of it in the common areas because that is where the Verath had gathered, and because I could not stay in my cabin knowing what was happening just down the corridor. The children adapted fastest, as children always do. They were curious about everything. They asked questions in color so quickly that our translators were logging new vocabulary daily. One boy, around 10 years old, discovered that the ship's navigation display cast blue light on the walls at certain angles, and spent an entire afternoon changing his skin to match it exactly, then changing back, then matching it again, laughing each time. I watched him do this for a while. Then I asked the translator to tell him what the blue color was, where it came from, what it meant. The translator told him about navigation systems and photon wavelengths and stellar cartography. He listened seriously. Then his skin shifted to something the translator was still learning. It offered its best interpretation, something related to wonder, attached to something related to ownership, not ownership of the light, ownership of the knowledge of the light. The feeling of understanding something that used to be mysterious. I thought that was one of the best feelings the universe had to offer. I was glad he was getting to feel it for the first time. We arrived at Earth on a morning in October. I stood at the observation window again, same spot as when we left, and I watched Earth grow from a small bright point into the blue and green impossible thing it always is. I heard, behind me, the sound of movement. Quiet at first, then more. The Verath had come to the windows. 11,000 years of planetary memory still lived in their biology, even if no living Verath had ever touched a planet. Some things are written deeper than experience. Their skin began changing, all of them near the windows, and the colors moved across them in waves, person to person, like the same feeling traveling through a crowd. The translators were overwhelmed. They captured fragments, words like homecoming, words like impossible, a color that appeared over and over that the translators logged simply as new word, meaning under development. I did not try to translate it. Some things do not need translation. Some things you just stand next to and let be exactly what they are. On the resettlement ground in southern Australia, prepared over 3 years by a quiet team who had believed this day would come, the Verath began to build. Their structures grew rather than rose, biological and bioluminescent, glowing softly at night in colors that people drove hours to see. Human volunteers worked alongside them. Children went to school together. Verath students taught color philosophy. Human students taught football and cooking and the kind of loud, sprawling, affectionate arguing that humans have elevated into an art form. Languages crossed, traditions mixed. New things appeared that had not existed before. in the specific way that new things only appear when two different kinds of people decide they are not so different after all. The cooperative censure stood. 3 follow-up sanctions were issued. A cooperative review panel visited Earth and wrote a very long report about our disregard for established procedure. We framed that one too. But some things in the cooperative also shifted, quietly, in the way that institutions shift when they are confronted with something they cannot argue against, but are not yet ready to fully admit. Several member species began asking questions, careful questions, diplomatic questions, questions with a lot of cushioning language around them, questions about the Compact Clause, questions about how sponsorship worked, questions about whether Earth would share its logistical methodology. We shared everything. We had always intended to. Shimmer at Dusk attended the resettlement ceremony on the coast, 1 year after our arrival at Vareth 9. He stood in the open air for the first time in his life, in the light of a sun, on ground that had weight and texture, and his skin moved through colors so rapidly and so richly that the translators gave up trying to keep pace and simply recorded it for later study. Afterward, he found me near the water. He was calm by then. His colors had settled into something deep and slow. He asked if I was satisfied. I looked at the horizon. I thought about the list. 41 stations, 11 addressed so far across the fleet, 30 still waiting, 30 populations still in the cold and quiet, still wondering if anyone remembered them, still teaching their children the names of things they had never seen. Not yet, I said. He turned the color I now knew perfectly, the one we had made together on the ship, in the second month, when we had run out of existing words for what we were both feeling, and had to build a new one from scratch. Determined amber, with gold at the edges, and something beneath it that moved like the beginning of a very long journey that you have chosen freely and completely, and without any reservation at all. It meant, good, neither are we.